Well, back with us now are Holly Mckenzie, founder and CEO of Boring Money, along with Joanne Romaniuk from Paynton, who says she's struggling to make ends meet, and Matthew Mckenzie from London, a working carer. I'm going to go to Joanne first, because we just heard about housing there, and earlier when we spoke to you, you raised concerns about somebody like you being really unable to kind of afford to be on the property ladder.
Yeah, I'm already stuck in it, and my concerns were the fact that I moved into shared ownership and the prices for this just keep rising, and that's nothing to do with the mortgage rates, that's to do with affordable housing and the housing association. So I'd actually like to see caps on rises to things like this for housing association properties.
Holly, let me bring you in. You're the financial expert, the number cruncher, shall we say. You heard from Joanne earlier. Now you've heard what the Chancellor had to say. What's in that budget that can directly help someone like Joanne?
I think there are two bits of good news actually for Joanne from the budget today. The first was the Chancellor announced that the OBR, that's the watchdog that makes sure politicians aren't just making up the numbers and are telling the truth. They've said inflation's forecast to come down to under 2% this year. So the good news for Joanne, although it's not directly controlled by the Chancellor, is that her mortgage should be coming down, so those payments should be easing. The other good news, of course, for Joanne is that headline change to national insurance. That means that the average person will see another impact on their take-home pay. So at the end of the year, she'll be £450 better off. As for questions, though, directly about property, the Chancellor didn't make any announcements that will directly benefit Joanne today, and he also missed an opportunity to improve the lifetime ISA, which is something to help more young people get back onto the property ladder.
OK, one thing I just want to touch on before we move on to Matthew's particular circumstances. We spoke to a journalist earlier who is renting, and she said there wasn't really much in there for renters. So obviously Joanne owns her place. But there are renters who are concerned that there wasn't enough in there for them, and the housing challenges are really great at the moment, aren't they?
I think the Chancellor today, what he has done is he's tried to tackle the problem of buy-to-let. So he certainly sort of looked at the costs of buy-to-let out there and has done something to change that. He's also brought down capital gains tax for higher rate taxpayers on second properties. I think he's trying to get more property back into the market to get that moving up. But again, for sort of people in Joanne's situation or people renting, there was no good news for them in today's budget.
OK, Holly, do stay with us. We're going to now go to Matthew. Matthew, you are a carer, but you also hold down a job, and there are challenges with that and the affordability of that. Just tell us what you thought of what the Chancellor had to say. Did you feel that there was anything in there for you?
Hardly anything at all, to be honest. And it's not just for working carers. I did have a chat with other carers who were really excited to see me on the BBC, and they started to watch the budget, and they didn't realise that the opposition would be extra excited. So, but I mean, that excitement died down really when there wasn't any focus on carers allowance or a national carer strategy, and I didn't really expect much for myself being a working carer. Some carers got back to me stating that they were fairly pleased about the household support fund being extended. A lot of unpaid carers that I know are really struggling with high energy costs. But to be honest, I didn't really expect to hear much from the budget on my circumstances today.
OK, do you want to ask Holly anything? Holly, what would you say to Matthew?
I was actually, because I talked to Matthew earlier, Matthew, I was listening out in the budget for things that may help you and your family. There was a small nod to those on universal credit in the budget. Any advance payments, you now have longer time frame to repay those. As Matthew also mentioned, the household support fund, that's run by local councils, that's been given another lifeline for a further 6 months. But the big flagship announcement today, that cut in national national insurance for lower income families, for those earning, say, £20,000 a year, that's only going to mean £149 more in their pockets at the end of the year. So Matthew, I'm sorry, I did try and find something for you in the budget, but it wasn't a great budget for lower income families.
Matthew's listening in. Matthew, what would you like to say directly to Holly?
No, I'd just like to say thanks for being there, to raise the issues of this budget's not an easy thing to understand, but I think it's so important that those who are struggling listen into the BBC and get information and advice, and perhaps look forward to the next budget, and can only hope and pray that there will be support for those who are struggling in providing care for what we should often try and do, care and support for their loved ones.
And what would you say to that?
I say thank you to Matthew because of his case study, and talking to him, he's highlighted for me there are 5 million working carers in the UK. They're not going to be helped much by today's national insurance announcement. So Matthew, I'm going to do a bit of digging. I'll write some blogs on this and see if I can find any silver linings to the clouds of today's budget for lower income families.
Joanne, I think you're still with us too, aren't you? Is there anything else you would like to ask Holly before we wrap this up?
I'm not sure. I feel a bit lost with the whole budget because I feel like we got 30 odd quid back a month, but when a weekly shop costs a small fortune and my rent has gone up by 20% in just a year, that's nothing.
Okay.
I think to Joanne, hang on in there. Few bills will come down in April. Mortgage payments should be coming down for people. I understand the cost of living is a heavy pressure on many, but there will be, in the average person's pocket at the end of this year, about £1,000 more because of the national insurance cut today and also the one at the beginning of the year. So I think there are faint signs that things will ease a little, but certainly, we're not through the woods yet, and it's tough out there for most families.
Okay, Holly, thank you so much for taking both Matthew and Joanne through their personal circumstances, and of course there is plenty more analysis if you're watching at home and you want to know a bit more about how this budget impacts you personally. Well, we have plenty of explainers, more details, and if you've missed the details of the budget and you just want to recap, you can also go to the BBC News website, and we have information and some clips of what the Chancellor and the leader of the opposition Labour Party had to say as well. So there's loads more on the BBC News website, so do please stay on that as well.